Good day, everyone. Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Seven Directions podcast. Also broadcasting today on YouTube because I'm really excited and delighted to be here with Paul Winsper. Hi, Paul.
Good morning, Steph.
Good morning. Now, before we came online, we already got stuck into a lot of conversations, and that's probably an indicator of what we're going to be talking about today and how easily this exchange will flow because we have very similar interests. But I want to give you some background to Paul. Some of you will already know of him and some of you won't. So my interest in Paul is that he's a leading expert in longevity, athletic and strength conditioning and performance, and really is looking to do and is doing a lot of work around optimization of the human body. So Paul works at the intersection of health, wellness and athletic performance, and through his career has worked with athletes and coaches in premier organizations like the NFL, NHL, NBA and MLS. All of these letters are American organizations as far as I'm aware. And whether it's coaching champion boxers or Olympic athletes, your expertise, Paul, spans various disciplines. So having spent many decades in the fitness industry, originally, well, we'll go into this, but you were a cricketer, I think yourself as well. And then having worked for 10 seasons at Newcastle United, boo, with Bobby Robson as their fitness coach and director of athletic performance for Under Armour. You've also worked with Toronto FC and Nike, amongst other big names. And you are the current founder and CEO of ProBio Nutrition, an athlete research, science-backed and evidence-based supplement, which I can say firsthand is absolutely lit. And those of you who know me know how passionate I am about exploring supplementation. So Paul, thank you so much for making the time to be here today, and a big warm welcome.
That's a real pleasure, Steph. Thank you for the invite. Really appreciate it.
Well, I'm humbled, and I find that I keep on connecting with. This is one of my favorite qualities, actually, humility, because you have a wealth of experience there and a big background, but you didn't hesitate to say yes. You didn't ask how big is her podcast, how many people are listening. None of that was important to you. Like, tell me why.
I don't do social media. I don't have Facebook. I don't do it. I'm very passionate about what I do, and I genuinely believe the message gets out when we communicate with like-minded people and we work across each other's networks and we help each other. You know, there's so many people out there wanting to be really famous really quickly through Instagram, and it takes decades of failure and decades of learning to have an opinion that we can say, if we do this, then there's a high probability that this will happen based on decades.
Decades.
And why people like you and I should be chatting and sharing our wisdom and our knowledge around what didn't work. So that's my passion. Whether one person listens to it or a million doesn't bother me at all. If we can improve one life, upgrade one life, change a few practices, one person, it's enough for me.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's really my philosophy as well. Like, I think, my shamanic teacher always taught me to approach things with beginner's mind in all humility. Because I agree with you, and I've had people, and I'm sure you have, say, oh, you changed my life, or that breathwork session changed my life, or this community changed my life. Community is really big for me. So
Yeah.
I know it is for you, and I know you take your work out there both theoretically in developing systems and structures and looking at new research, but also practically the practical application. Before we get into any of that, I love people's stories. I love to know what drives a person. I love to know what they evolved through. And you already pointed to the fact that this takes decades, and it has for me in my journey of recovery. And I remember saying to my daughter once that it takes decades, and because she was asking, will I always feel like this, struggling with anxiety and depression? And I said, no, just keep doing the things. And she said, well, I don't want to wait 30 years, because I said it had taken me that long to get there. But we look at what the choices are and then we keep going. So I want to know with you, like, who was the boy that became the man who's sitting here now? And what were the inspirations and drivers for you that took you on your path?
Yeah. Yeah, I came up from a very loving family, but we had nothing, like literally nothing. And I just appreciated everything. I had this crazy enthusiasm for everything that I did. And I always just threw myself into it without worrying about anything other than just doing what I was doing at that point, even from being a little boy. And if I was going to do art as a 5-year-old, I used to really do art. I used to draw birds. I was obsessed with birds as a little boy, and I used to draw birds, and I used to take them in and show my teachers, and they used to put them up on the wall. Like, I used to just throw myself in with all of this enthusiasm. And I just carried it on my whole career, my whole life. And I was never afraid to step away from things that weren't working for me, but from the outside may have looked like, why on earth is he giving that up? Why is he walking away from that? Like, if it's not working for me, I'm okay saying I wasn't tied to the money. I wasn't tied to the status. I wasn't tied to the outward perception of what I was doing. It was like, it doesn't feel right. I'm done. I'm out. I'm going to my next thing. And that's been my whole life. It's kind of, I'll move into things, try things, and say, no good, next. And it's not me having any kind of attention deficit. It's just me exploring life and trying things and finding out what I really liked. So that took me from, growing up in the northeast of England and just loved living up here. My brother and I were sports fanatics. We just played every sport, competitive with everything. Even how fast we could drink a glass of water, like everything was a competition. And I kind of left school, didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I thought at one point I wanted to be a PE teacher. And by the way, I didn't play cricket. I worked at Durham Cricket Club as a performance guy, but I am terrible at cricket. I tried to play, but I wasn't good. And then it kind of evolved. I stumbled through some early career choices where I thought it would make me happy. I was working in insurance, but as a broker, and financially great, had all the trappings, and just really didn't like it. And my wife said, come on, let's follow the dream. Like, really do what you passionately want to do. And we were married at the time. We had a house, a mortgage. Said, come on, let's get you back to university and get retrained. And she funded me through university. We've been together since we were 15. And
Wow.
I'm now almost 60. And she said, come on, let's get you through. So I went to do sport and exercise science at Northumbria University. And again, threw myself in. And it was, I knew I was always manifesting, always like, how am I going to get to that? How am I going to get to that? But in a very genuine way. It wasn't like, I want a Porsche and I want £1 million. It's like, I want to do a job where I can do this, try this. And I knew I needed a good degree. So the other students, I was 26 when I went back, 20, whatever. And I knew I needed a good degree and I needed to know my subject. And I was in the library studying. My wife dropped me off on her way to work. And I was in the library at 8:30 and she finished work at 5. I was leaving at 5. In addition to my lectures, the students are out partying and I was just study. Loved my degree. And then I was fortunate enough to meet a guy called Phil Dix, and he was working with the English Cricket Board it was called the Sports Council at the time. It's like the precursor to the English Institute of Sport. And he said, hey, we might have a role with English cricket. I was like, okay, fantastic. So that was my break. I had an ability to then go and work with elite athletes and apply this model, this method that wasn't just, bench press, squats and running. It was, so I kicked off my PhD at Durham University with Dr. Peter Warburton, and we started to look at growth and maturation, but holistically. And it hadn't really been done before. And I was trying to quantify, if we could really understand the impact of what we do to an organism, how much can we accelerate learning, growth of muscle, recovery, etc. And I didn't get a chance to finish my PhD because then Newcastle came in and offered me the job that I had been trying to manifest, like my boyhood team, and that was it. I kind of went to Newcastle, and I always thought I was going to go back to academia. I just loved reading about the subject, and then I kind of stayed at Newcastle longer than I thought I was going to, and had some amazing managers, amazing experiences, learned so much about things I was okay at and things I wasn't so good at. And I was first full-time performance coach, fitness coach in the Premier League. There were lots of people coming in as consultants and doing a session and leaving, but there was never a full-time person. And I got a chance to basically put a system in place. We didn't have nutritionists, we didn't have a gym, didn't have strength workouts, didn't have mindset, we didn't have a thing.
Right.
So again, that comes from that background of just throwing myself into things and not being afraid to fail and learn. So yeah, that was kind of my career up to Newcastle. And as I say, stayed 9 seasons, 10 seasons. And it got to the point where I just wasn't seeing my family.
Yeah.
And kind of left Newcastle to the dismay of my whole family and friends of like, and kind of set up a little business. And I was consultant to a few athletes. One of the first calls was from David Beckham. It was like, oh, would you come and work with me? He's like, yeah.
Yeah, all right then.
Yeah, but, I didn't go looking for it. It was just that fell on my doorstep and did that. It was only for a very short period of time, but again, just that opportunity opened a lot of other doors. And then Nike came along and they offered me.
Let me just pause a minute there, Paul, because you've said a few things that I want to ask you about. And I suppose the link there is the Beckham link, who said, will you come and work with me? Because that indicates to me that your work was being talked about, or that your work was getting some kind of recognition, because, at that time, Beckham would have been in its prime, and other footballers as well. And you just talked about a system, and that system, as you describe it, is holistic, the kind of mindset, the nutrition, the other things that often in your work and my work get overlooked. So in my work, it'll be everybody's focusing on the breath, but they might not be looking at their sleep, or they might not be looking at their nutrition at all. In your work, they might be hyper focused on the fitness and the kind of muscles and the strength and the endurance. So was that system something quite unique?
I hadn't fully developed the system then, to be honest. I was still learning. And, I don't want to make this a David Beckham claim. David was a tiny grain of sand on a beach.
Yeah.
That is a mile long.
Yeah.
I didn't work with David long enough to have any impact on anything he ever did. It was just, it was an example of kind of, you leave a job that's secure and you think, I don't know what's next. And then things drop on the doorstep, which are then precursors to a lot of people going, oh, you did that. Oh, wow. Even though to me, it was just working with this amazing athlete, this amazing human being for a very short period of time, that led to a lot of other things and opened a lot of other doors.
Listening to your story, it's like listening to me. It really is, Paul. It's like, this is how I live my life. So I kind of do the same thing where I'm very hyper focused and great. And my skill was also drawing when I was younger. It just wasn't birds, but I would lose myself in that. And I've always had the capacity to really put my attention on something. But when I have felt as an older person, and I navigated through years of addiction in my early years and trauma recovery, like pretty serious addictions. And so, my calling was based on need. It was like, I was traveling, I wasn't feeling too well. I was fairly recently out of these addiction years. And I ended up in New York City, bridging some parts of my life on this conference that I decided to go to. And, the conference was in LA, and I discovered juice bars and just literally grabbing a juice, going, wow, this feels amazing. Like, something is happening, and doing it every day, and then going, I want to do this. I'm going to set up a juice bar. Yeah. But my whole life, very much like you've described, I've walked away from things when I have felt, and listening to you, you're talking about that felt sense, that intuition, that it's not right. Even when other people have gone, but you've set up a successful business there, but that's doing really well. So there's two things. The one is that intuitive desire for growth and trust in the growth process.
Yeah,
The other thing is knowing when something is no longer like really fulfilling those parts that
yeah,
you are looking for fulfillment in. And lots of people describe that with me as, oh, well, you're really lucky. You always fall on your feet. Maybe they've done the same with you, I don't know.
yeah,
And it's like, no, it's not luck. It's that deep sense of trust that
yeah,
life will take us where we need to go. And so your life, your continuum from starting in all these fields, you're still at it. You're still developing things. You've still got systems that you're wanting to bring in.
yeah. That drives me still every day.
I was just about to say what drives you.
Every day it drives me, Steph. I got, I trained through the classic method of understanding sports science, exercise physiology, anatomy, and I always knew there was something missing. And you go into a job, set up strength programs, and you set up warm-up routines and stretch routines, and I was always looking out to other experts and trying to integrate, but never felt right. And I was looking at things thinking, like, is the heart a pump or is the motor the heart? Is I wanted to move beyond this kind of Newtonian model of the heart's a pump, the liver's a filter, the bones and muscles are levers and pulleys. And I started to look at a much more an energy-based model. So what are we as a human? What are we as an organism? What energies? So just because we can't see it and can't measure it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I took that leap of faith. And when you move away from, and by the way, I'm still a scientist that does like to measure things and track things and monitor things.
Yeah.
I took a leap of faith in my own education that maybe there's more than what I've been reading for the past 20 plus years. And then I started to explore things like polyvagal theory. I started to explore things like vibrational medicine. I started to just explore these different areas and say, okay, maybe I can expand my thinking and my model. Maybe I can start to explain why these organisms are adapting differently to the same stimulus, the same mechanical stimulus. And then I started to look more holistically. And that was my breakthrough, Steph, of just breaking through the conventions of the education that I'd had and the experience that I'd had to kind of look at it from a different angle. Not a complete, I still believe in that Newtonian model, but then another layer around it and another layer and another layer. And then I can now help explain why certain things happen. And it's not just the obvious that I was educated by, so
Yeah, thank you for bringing that in, because I remember years ago going to a talk in Birmingham actually by David Wolf, and he'd been talking about whether you love him or hate him is irrelevant, but he'd been talking about when science becomes scientism, when it becomes a dogma. And like you, I work in these very unseen realms. I have a shamanic practice, I work with energy, I work with breath, as you know now. But I also recognize that it's really important that the two go hand in hand and that they are underpinning each other, because if we get rooted too much in that dogma of science, then everything is measurable, everything is quantifiable. I feel it's reductive to our experience as human beings. And, as somebody at the moment who's in a kind of a relationship with my heart, and we were talking a little bit about this earlier, so maybe we can touch upon that. I'm starting to realize as I come and do the body work and I come and do the energy healing and I come and do the talk therapy, that alongside this heart, there are very real pieces of grief that are sitting in there that haven't been processed, that my body's holding on to and that I need to be with and work with. Well, it doesn't sound like rocket science to a lot of people, that, right? And I work in this area. And yeah, I was going, oh my gosh, like I believe that those unhealed stories that are sitting there, they're the things that are driving me to push myself too hard in some activities, or to eat when I'm not hungry because it's emotional, or it's, again, these things are quite basic concepts. But I think when we begin to look at the body as this holistic mechanism with amazing seen and unseen and measurable and immeasurable capacities, that's when we're coming into the magic and the mystery of what it is to be human.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it's kind of keeping an eye on the science to make sure that it doesn't get too crazy. And what can we explain and what do we not need to explain is where my head is right now. And so for example, I started to build a model looking at, if we put the human at the center as an organism, and we look at these hormetic stresses, like there's a dose response. There's a dosage that's optimal, and there's a dose that's too much, and a dosage that's not enough to get the response we need. So, we start to look at all of these fads of like, oh, cold water immersion, ice baths. Well, too much of it's really bad. Not enough. Maybe we're not creating the stimulus we want. Perfect amount. Let's give it a go. Too much sunlight, really bad. Not enough, really bad. What's the optimum? So I started to just look at, rather than just looking at training parameters like GPS data, started trying to look at this organism and say, if you think about an athlete, they turn up at a training facility and everybody wants a piece of them. There's a strength coach, there's a nutritionist, there's a physio, there's a masseur, there's a head coach, there's a positions coach, right? And nobody was quantifying the cumulative effect of everybody trying to have a piece of the athlete. They only saw what they were seeing for that period of time they had the athlete. And what we were missing was this cumulative stress of everybody wanting a piece. And the athletes were kind of lying down getting a massage, and there was commotion everywhere. And I'm thinking, like, how can that athlete be in a state in terms of the nervous system to receive that recovery stimulus when they're in a highly stimulating environment?
Right.
So how can we change environments? So instead of just looking at the mechanical application of a massage, I started to look at some of that, the polyvagal theory of saying, like, what if we take them out of those stressed environments and then we apply the recovery stimulus in an environment that's more in line with what the outcome is that we're looking for. So yeah, that's what we tried to do. And I started to build facilities where athletes could really come and recover. And it wasn't just a room tagged onto the back of a gym or a room tagged onto the back of the treatment room. There were rooms that people could detach from. And we started to use things that everybody thought, this is crazy. This is a long time ago, Steph. I introduced in the infrared and infrared light. And there was enough research that had been translated for me to say, yes, this is a potential recovery tool, but more longevity tool to help athletes. So I invested in the red light panels and got athletes through. And anecdotally, they were saying, I feel amazing. This feels really good. And then I started to do the research around infrared saunas, far infrared saunas. And my recovery facilities were no longer protein shake, ice bath, and massage. I was trying to understand what the athlete was recovering. Was it emotional stress? Was it metabolic stress? Was it a mechanical stress?
Right.
And the journey in the recovery facility was based upon truly how we were going to help the athletes recover, which is real holistic point of view. So I started to experiment with biophotonics, the LED, the lights that flicker, looking at how can we put the brain in a state where it isn't chatting to itself and creating all of this negativity that then inhibits the whole recovery process. So yeah, we start to look at it. So an athlete would come in and we'd say, there is no point in just applying a massage when the stress is coming from a different source. So then we start to use binaural beats, and we start to use sound therapies, and the athletes are like, wow, I feel really relaxed now. This is really good, as opposed to one size fits all, almost like that sausage factory of massage, you have a protein shake, you jump, or whatever order it is now. But we start to look at the athlete much more holistically.
Well, I love this because it's kind of pointing to relaxing into optimization, really, isn't it? Because, of course, those athletes, they're not just there when all of the team are wanting a piece of them. They go home and they have lives and they have backgrounds and they have stresses and they have stories.
Yeah,
And then navigating again what it is to be human and then showing up. So I think when that hyper focus is just on the body and we're not putting in those other things that support that you were doing ahead of your time by all sounds, we're missing a really fundamental piece of their experience in life. But I think that comes from our thrive and drive culture, that we push, we push, we push.
yeah,
We're all about productivity. So it's either the productivity of the athlete and how good they are for the team and are they meeting those, key targets that we're setting for them, or it's productivity out in the world when we go home. I should have this by now, status, all the things that you said at the very beginning that you're not bothered about, that really we like to think that we could bring other people towards.
yeah, yeah. That's exactly it. The other thing that really was driving me was, my research was going from being concerned about how strong they were, how fast they were, to then I went through this phase of saying, right, okay, that's kind of taken care of itself. How are these people adapting, and what impact is it having on other components of their life? And then I ended up really getting into this athletic longevity, not
Mm,
being extending somebody's health span, like the number of years they're going to live healthily, as opposed to I lived to 90, but I was riddled with disease for the last 20 years and on drugs. I'm talking about getting people to a state of having this wonderful, fulfilled, healthy, functional living right
mm.
to the day they die healthy. I was trying to say, what if I could take the learnings, because mitochondria is mitochondria, a muscle is a muscle, a heart is a heart, fundamentally. But what if we could apply this to athletic longevity, and athletes could leave their sport without their brains and their bodies being smashed, broken,
Yeah,
and then they're kind of just waiting for the inevitable of the hip replacement or the brain injuries, or like, what if we could get ahead of that and get the athletes to leave sport and then high functioning people in society, as opposed to, it's tough for athletes at the highest level. They have all
yeah,
the adoration and the adrenaline and the cortisol, and then the highs, hormonally, and then all of a sudden it's like switched off. Like,
yeah.
now where do they get that joy? Where do they get that it's kind of helping them understand this transition, and understanding that they can find joy in other things. And
Mm,
a lot of them, it's like they get an injury, they're inflamed, anti-inflammatories, pills, painkillers. Then you kind of look at their gut health and what's happening with the painkillers, and like, how do we get ahead of that?
mm.
Uh,
I'd like to again pause a moment there to talk a little bit about inflammation and to talk a little bit about stress, because many people will relate to those things. They may not know that they're inflamed on the inside, but most people know that they're stressed. And anxiety and stress are two of the things in our time that are really creating a lot of problems. So I know you shared some of your own story. I don't know whether or not you want to share any of that now in this part, but about recognizing inflammation and how it was impacting you. And I've certainly been looking at that with this message that my heart is giving me. How might people understand what inflammation is and why it's there? What have you seen with that?
yeah, we know that inflammation protects us. Like, we have something that happens to us as an organism, and then inflammation is going there to help us repair. Like, check, we need it. It's when it becomes a constant and it's systemic that it becomes this problem for us. So, I was in that mindset of, I train these athletes, and this worked and this worked, and I was trying to kind of keep myself fit by trying to do the same things. Bear in mind, I was a guy in my 50s, and this is a while back, and I, I got some blood work done, and I was like, this can't be my blood. I'm lifting every day, I'm working out every day, I'm in great shape, and my inflammatory markers were through the roof, and the doc's like, need to do something. And I kind of just stopped and had this moment where, like, how did I get myself into that state? And I was doing, blood flow restriction training and, really tearing myself up without really understanding, without stopping to understand the impact it was having on me. And it wasn't until I got my blood work back that I thought, okay, foot off the gas, foot off the gas. And then I started to understand what then worked for me. So instead of what I used to race bikes, and I would have to be on my bike every day. And I was just thinking, if this isn't hurting me, it's not helping me.
Right.
And then I got to the point of, I'm riding a bike now for the joy of riding my bike. It's a completely different mindset. And I started to integrate yoga. I started to integrate the breath work. I started to integrate the sauna. So my workout today might be a sauna, some red light, a yoga session, and a breath work. That's my workout. And we coined this phrase of work in, work out, work in. So if you work out, taken out of the body resources, I need to work in and put back in. We stole it from a world-class CrossFit guy, James Newbury, who was talking to us his obsession with recovery, because he can't do what he does at the highest level on the international stage in CrossFit unless he's recovering the right way.
Right.
So I started to adapt and change things. And yeah, I got myself back into a place where training wasn't becoming the stressor that was becoming negative. So people are saying, oh, well, yeah, you're strength training 4 times a week, you're riding your bike 5 times a week, that's great. Well, it wasn't. It's too much. It was too much. And understanding when it was too much and why it was too much, and then changing my program was a big, big breakthrough for me.
Yeah, I mean, I found a quote of yours. I found several, but I found a quote of yours online that said, the psychology of behavior change is about engagement and information, and you don't want your routines to get predictable or they become boring. But as I'm listening to you, there is a certain level of predictability about what you're putting in now. Has your response to that quote changed, or you still stand by it?
No, I still stand by it. I think what we need, the body needs to know that it is going to get exposure to movement, exercise.
Mm-hmm.
That's that regularity, that commitment to saying, I'm going to give time to do this. Now, what my quote was more around, they're called windows of trainability. So if I understand that my nervous system is completely fried today, there is no point in me jumping on a bike and doing repeat sprint intervals. I'm going to have adaptation. I'm going to do myself probably more harm. So maybe that window today's for a zone 2 cardiovascular workout, or a yoga session, or a breathwork session. So for me, it was that the stimulus is going to be based upon truly what I need, but I don't know what I need until I understand how the impact of my sleep. Like, did I sleep really well? Did I get enough deep sleep that's allowed all of the repair of the muscle, the tissue, the brain, the lymphatic drainage? Like, check. I wake up, I feel amazing. Check my sleep, amazing. I can then do my workout. So that's what I mean by that kind of ebb and flow, that like keep the body guessing, but based on underpinning science.
Yeah.
Based upon my recovery. So yeah, it's a really interesting, and I still stand by it. I would just add though that I have part of a in the US called Alta. So I'm the Chief Science and Performance Officer, and these 2 amazing guys, serial entrepreneurs, decided that they really wanted to help people in the health, wellness, fitness, and longevity space. And they pulled me in from the beginning, and we started to look at, like, what if we could take the people's DNA, and we could look at people's predispositions to adaptation to either cardio workouts or strength workouts, or what if we could look at their assimilation of fats, carbs, proteins? Then what if we could look at their response to stress, their response to inflammation, their chronotype, and build a program around that? But then every day there were biometrics. So imagine the DNA is giving me my roadmap. of basically this is how genetically you're going to best respond to different stimuli. But then every day my biometrics say, go and climb Everest, like amazing. You're recovering, you slept well, your heart rate variability's been amazing, on the right trend, go, go, go. But on days where that's not right for me, it would say, hey, Paul, today we're going to do restorative yoga for 30 minutes. We're going to do some breath work, and you're going to go for a walk, and we're going to give you this track on mindfulness during your walk. Like, now we build it. And now you experience it all through this mirror in your home, where the trainer turns up and guides you through your bespoke custom program based on you at that point in time, guided by your genetics for the bigger roadmap. It's really, really interesting. So that's where I'm putting my time, is the right exposure to the right stimulus at the right time, the right adaptation.
Do you know what I love as I listen to you? It's like reframing longevity, which is a very trendy word. Well, originally it was biohacking. Andy said, I hate that word. Then we came to longevity, but it's like reframing it as self-care. Because, yeah, exactly that. It's like I have enough awareness and enough presence to know that today this isn't right for me. I just want to say, though, like, what do you suggest for the many people who won't have access to biometrics or DNA sampling, or where do they start?
I think the most important thing is, if you don't have the technologies, just being in tune with yourself.
Right.
I think you can get a lot of information from just when you wake up. Don't jump straight on the phone. The worst thing you can do is just take a moment, and we teach athletes to do this with really high success, is wake up and just take a moment for yourself and just check in. Just have that self-check-in. It's like, get a couple of breaths in. How do I feel?
Yeah.
Like, how do I feel? The athlete will then get up, and we have this tiny little stretch routine. We just go up into extension. We just work through the hips a little bit, and then we'll go and seek some light. And then we'll do our affirmations for the day, and our intent for the day, and our gratitude for the day. So basically what I'm trying to do is to set myself up to say, really, how am I feeling today? And that, to me, over time, is equally as powerful as having technology to say you slept really well.
Yeah.
But the technology helps guide that. It's a combination, to me, Stefan, always has been, between technology and intuition.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm fascinated by is the fact, in terms of the technology piece, that you mentioned that according to our DNA, we might have a different proclivity or aptitude for example, strength training or high intensity workouts, or slow and stretching and all of that. And that's never occurred to me. I mean, most of us now will have heard of eat right for your type, and some people live by that and others don't agree with it. But I kind of feel like, there's these templates for how we can live and how we can be. And it's exciting to think that there may be something in my body that is going, oh, where am I overriding? And again, I mentioned to you at the beginning, my friend and colleague Teo, who asked me recently, when I was talking about, I've spent my whole life a bit like you, that if it doesn't hurt, it's not doing me good. So I'd go for the circuit training, the burn zone fitness, the HIIT fitness. And I was thinking about this while I was preparing for this talk today, that my personal trainer used to say, which I'm sure you've heard many times in your work, go to failure now, go to failure. And literally, I would come out of those sessions absolutely exhausted, but the recovery pieces weren't in place. So there I am, pushing myself into that failure position in a system and structure that might not even have been good for me.
Yeah.
And yet, at the same time, what I want to balance is, I can be inherently lazy in some ways. I'm not a lazy person, but we're all that, are we?
100% we are. We all will, yeah. People will look for the line of least resistance, generally. but again, just thinking that through, it's kind of that we say, like, you're a cardiovascular athlete. You're going to better adapt to get your body weight changes, for example, doing cardiovascular exercise. It doesn't mean doing HIIT workouts every day. So we balance everything out based on the prevailing science. And where does this, again, I don't want to get into the fashion, but basically we've been working with this concept of zone 2, lighter exercise, and looking at the adaptations that occur when you work for a prolonged period in a steady state. Really important for our long-term cardiovascular health. But also, so is HIIT. Completely different adaptations. It's the ratio and the balance between the two. And when you're ready to do this HIIT is the critical factor here. So I'm not saying HIIT workouts are bad. I'm saying HIIT workouts are bad at the wrong time. And if that's all you do, then you're neglecting all of the cardiovascular health adaptations that occur during a zone 2 lower intensity. So we follow the science with Alter to say, yes, you're a cardio athlete, but there are many ways to get to that long-term cardiovascular health and fitness. So we use the science. And then the most important thing is we can measure the adaptation. Are you getting better? Are you getting strong? Because we've got 24/7 heart rate. We're looking at recovery heart rates. We're looking at how the cardiovascular system is adapting loads. And are you getting stronger? Are you getting fitter? Are you getting healthier? So yeah, there's a lot to unpack. It's not just HIIT workouts and low intensity. It's understanding when dose response.
Yeah, and I mean, sleep is really the kind of 13th bad fairy that people, certainly I look at my son, he's 24, and if I start to talk about the importance of regular sleep routines and sleep hygiene, be like, yeah, whatever, mum. and he does, I mean, to give him credit, he does kind of take a lot of what I talk about now more seriously. But so many people underestimate the value of sleep routines and how that impacts the body. You talked a little bit about that before. Is that a really big part of your program as well?
Yeah, my model, and it's taken me a long time to develop this model, is if we think about the fundamental building blocks of ultimate human optimization. So this optimization is being a better parent, being a better athlete, performing at the highest level, becoming MVP of the NBA. It doesn't matter what that pinnacle optimization is. It's based upon a really solid foundation. And the blocks of the foundation I've built is sleep better, eat better, move better, think better, and breathe better. Have those 5 fundamental pillars in place, and you're sleeping well. Now, we know if you sleep well, you're going to make better decisions with your nutrition. If you're sleeping well and you're fully recovered, you're going to have, and we know the science is telling us, a better chance to do your workouts and be more active. We know that breath work helps you sleep better. We know that eating better will help. They're all connected.
Yeah.
They're all connected. And what I've been trying to do is to give people the basic tools. So if you think about the 4 at the bottom, they're the 5 at the bottom, we then have these 4 layers. The 4 layers are function.
Yeah.
There is no point in me trying to get you to do this really crazy breathwork session or this really crazy workout session unless you have the basic function. So I always start with function. For example, if we're looking at movement, everybody, not everybody, but there's a lot of people go to YouTube and they'll get the fancy exercises and drills and follow these celebrities. Basically, if you don't have this function I'll give you a very simple example. If you have a lack of ankle mobility, for example.
A lack of which mobility?
Ankle mobility.
Yeah.
So about the ankle as a joint, and we're trying to find that mobility somewhere else up the kinetic chain.
Yeah.
And start to put a load through that, like either more reps, or you start running either faster or longer. You're putting some kind of load through that dysfunction. There's a point in time where it will become inflamed or it will turn to an injury. So what the first thing is, really, let's look at function. And I'm not saying you have to be, there's got to be no asymmetries and you've got to be perfect, but let's just make sure there are no big risk factors in functionally how you move. Then start to look at form. So moving, if you have the function, are you moving with good form? Then once you've got form, function and form, we can look at force. And force parameters are now I can put a load through this system.
Right.
And then at the end, it's flow state. I want athletes to be able to get to flow state. They'll be able to jump, land, twist, sprint, decelerate, accelerate in any sport, any walk of life, perform in flow state. Now, that will work with sleep. It'll work with breath. It'll work with nutrition.
100%, yeah.
And it's given people the tools to understand you don't always need to do the cool, sexy stuff up here if you're not doing the basic fundamentals here.
Yeah.
And that's my system, basically, getting the fundamental building blocks in place for people to live really healthy, long lives.
Do you know, I've really come to this in my breathwork practice in the last few years, because with the growth of breathwork exponentially, on social media and Instagram, we're seeing all this trend for catharsis and screaming and yelling and zero integration and zero awareness of what's happening in the body scientifically through those sessions. And so I'm like you, I'm very entrepreneurial. And so I've just recently developed a system called Slow Breath, which is the same principle, where if you go straight to those highly activating, highly dynamic practices, and you're not looking at all the underlying stresses or trauma history or PTSD or what somebody's ready for, you're actually doing more harm than good. You're creating more inflammation, you're creating more potential trauma. And I think people are afraid of slowing down because it's not sexy. It's not the thing that it's not clickbait. It's like potentially looks quite boring.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the problem. Therein lies the problem. It's always like this quick fix, get from A to B as quickly as I can, but they're not interested in the journey.
Yeah.
And, people used to say back in the days, like, slow down and smell the roses. Like, really important that if you follow my model, it does slow you down to smell the roses, and you understand what it feels like to have a really full, strong, diaphragmatic breath.
Yeah.
How that makes you feel. It makes you understand how great it is to sit down and eat really good, healthy, natural food with people. It makes you understand how you wake up after you've had a really good, sort of restorative deep sleep. Like, they're the fundamental smelling of the roses along the way, rather than another gadget that you put on your head to help you sleep better. It's like, yes, eventually, but we've got to get these things. Like, what's the thermostat on in your room? Like, like, what distraction? You have an air filter or the window open, or the sheets clean? Do you have the room decluttered? Give the brain a chance to switch off and let the body get to sleep. So it's about the environment. So that function, when we come to sleep, is about creating the correct environment to induce good quality restorative deep sleep. And I always say to my athletes, a great night's sleep begins the moment you wake up. It really does. Like, seek the light, start to look at the circadian entrainment of getting that light in the eyes first thing in the morning, starting to get the routine going. And again, is like going back to the system. I always look for the right tools to do this. That was the inspiration for building ProBio. Is could we move away from another protein powder and another energy drink and understand the pillars of human optimization and longevity, and look at gut health and brain cellular energy? We go. Yeah, super simple. And I built that Dr. Mark Bug, naturopath doctor, and we said, if we set the bar super high, and we said, if we can't do this in a very natural way, with an artificial sweeteners and artificial flavors, we're not going to do it. Can't remove the friction of having to take 12, 13, 14 pills with all of the fillers and all of the gelatin capsules. We're not going to do it. So the bar was super high. It took us longer than it should have. But we're now working with NBA, NFL, EPL, Olympic athletes. It's starting to really help people. And then the blood work's coming back, and we know we're having this incredible influence and making people feel better. With, again, basic function, like, get the basics right.
I love it. I love it. I really do. I'm finding, because like you, having recently discovered alarmingly high levels of inflammation, I was just like, oh, hang on a minute, what's happening in my body? What am I ignoring? Another one of your quotes, improving your performance is not the same as punishing yourself. And I think for many of us, kind of we're trying to do all the right things. So yeah, I'm supplementing and using good supplements. I've got enough information
Yeah,
and knowledge not to just go and buy some horrible cheaps, vitamin that's basically useless or is giving my body more stress to deal with.
there you go.
And when I was talking with Nisaga, who was also at Broughton when we met you recently, and he came back and he said, "Oh, I was chatting to the guys, and this supplement means that you shouldn't have to take anything else. I think you said apart from omegas."
Yeah, fish oil,
Yeah,
omega.
yeah, at first I was like, oh, that's quite expensive. And then I went, hang on a minute, Steph, what do you spend on vitamins each month? Because I do have a routine and a regimen. What are you spending on protein powders that have actually also got other things in? And when I looked at that and the value of it, so that's all I take now, the ProBio and omegas, good quality omegas. Not entirely. I'm just experimenting with berberine and NMN, which I don't know if they're in there or not. Actually, I might be doubling up.
It is.
It is.
It's in spectra that, so we have a really high dosage of the polyphenols
Yeah.
in that form, which is, again, if you look at it, it's all organic, it's all natural. It was, we went to the basic systems that we know humans need. Is, can we support joint health? Can we support muscle health? Can we support vision? Can we support cellular energy? Can we support gut health? And we now, well, we've known for a while, but the importance of a healthy gut, all of that diversity in the gut, and
Yeah.
our happiness is built in our gut. Serotonin is the precursors are built in the gut. It's like, if you have leaky gut, you have problems with your gut, it's tough to be happy. So
Yeah.
starting to understand, again, like I said before, it's all integrated. Everything is integrated, and we've got to start looking at this human organism. I keep saying human organism as opposed to the person. We need to look at this organism holistically,
Yeah.
as holistically as possible, and see how everything fits. It's like a really complicated jigsaw puzzle, and we're just figuring out where the pieces fit, and then we can see this beautiful thing come to life because we understand the importance of every single piece to create a beautiful shape.
Yeah, and I love that because the organism is the way that we think. It is whether or not we're cultivating gratitude. It is whether or not we're getting the support that we need to deal with the things that are impacting our ability to access gratitude or to believe that we can be these amazing creators that we are, because many people are struggling in life with the stories that they've come in with, or don't necessarily have that mindset that you and I have talked about. So I love the fact that when we talk about the organism, we're talking about everything that comes in. It's
Yeah,
almost like the big version of the cell, because the cell is interacting with the rest of the world and the people in the world, so they're the organism as well.
absolutely. Again, like that model, sleep better, think better, eat better, move. Think better is a huge component of,
Right.
of the model, and getting people to understand the impact of our thoughts. That old quote, or the old adage is, our thoughts become our words become our actions become our habits become our character determines our destiny. Like, careful what you think. So really starting to understand the impact of our thoughts, and if we wake up in a morning and it's like, it's miserable out there, it's raining, that's how your day is going to be manifesting in front of you. If
Yeah.
you wake up and you feel optimistic, and you go and you seek light, it doesn't have to be bright sunshine to get the light you need to set the brain in the right way. When we do our statements of intent and gratitude, we know there's a huge hormonal change setting us up to have a really good day. And I'm not all this, everything's amazing, because it isn't.
Yeah.
But if we can integrate these practices on a daily basis and turn them into habits, you see a huge change in your mindset. You see
Mm,
a change in your states of optimism.
mm,
And if you can take that in, so again, I keep saying to the athletes I work with, if we can be optimistic upon waking, it sets us up for the next and the task. And then you're pulling that optimism through into more components of your day.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
not to walk around smiling and high-fiving everybody, and it's just
Not bypassing. Yeah.
it's this beautiful measured optimism, and
Yeah.
and you see people who are optimistic, and
Yeah.
we train ourselves to be optimistic. Some people are naturally optimistic, but we can actually train ourselves to be more optimistic, looking at
Mm,
from a different angle. And when you do that, it has a huge impact on on the day. Yeah,
mm,
5, 6, 7 days a week, it has a huge impact on the week.
mm.
Do it month over month, it has a huge impact on the year, and you do it year after year, it has a huge impact on your life.
Yeah.
Just putting those tiny little things. Journaling is huge. You know, we teach athletes to journal, believe it or not, and the feedback we get was, I'm sleeping better because I'm now no longer worrying about all the things that I was worrying that I was going to forget.
Right.
So they're just journaling things, they're documenting things, they're able to put their thoughts and feelings out on a page and think, okay, that's documented and logged now. I'm not going to forget that. I can come back to that. So, and again, we know the hormonal effect of journaling, just feeling good about getting things out there. So yeah, we're again, it's gone from, how much can you bench press to now, are you journaling? How are you sleeping? Breathing? How are you manifesting? How are you moving? It's
Yeah.
a big shift for sure.
I mean, for me, gratitude practice was a game changer. And I know years ago I read somewhere that, and I'm not even sure if this was a recent thing actually, but that commitment trumps motivation every time, because we can all be motivated to do something. Then we have to find the commitment to, I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm not going to do this. I am going to get in the light. And, those habits and those routines, like the more that we cultivate them. When I first started trying out gratitude, it was like, I'm grateful for my car. I'm grateful for the food in my car. It was really basic. And I would repeat the same things. I didn't really know how to do it because it hadn't landed in my heart as a feeling. And when that experience started to come in, it was like, okay. No, I really am grateful for that. And now my focus and my lens comes through that gratitude, which carries me through difficult situations and hard times. It's almost like my version of faith, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
when you get to understand the power of the gratitude,
Yeah.
it sets it's a precursor to my intentions for the day. So
Yeah.
grateful and I feel really good and optimistic. My intent for the day when I set that is completely different. It has more impact. It has more power to it.
Hmm.
I feel ready to really get after that because there's that sense of gratitude, and I'm doing it because I want to feel good during the day, but I have a reason for doing it.
I'd like to ask you something that's just come up for me actually, based on this journaling thing, because I remember doing a breathwork session for men a few years back and being really surprised that the men at the end of it, well, one, in the sharing circle, and I hadn't allowed much time for it because when I do mixed groups, it's nearly always the women who share. And in the sharing circle, all the men wanted to share. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then at the end, they said, as feedback, they'd have liked more journal time. And I was like, men are asking for journal time. Men are asking for more space to share. So I actually asked at one point, how come, typically in the mixed groups, you're not sharing? I said, well, we tend to give that space to the women because, we feel like that's the gentlemanly thing to do.
Yeah,
So in these spaces, I love that you're bringing in from a performance-based and a longevity-based principle aspects that are traditionally kind of female in many ways. Oh, I'm going to talk about my feelings. I can express them and I can get them out. So rather than that yang pushing, you're bringing people into sleep quality, nutritional awareness.
yeah, it's huge, Steph. So I work with Andy Kane on
Yeah,
zero retreats, and they're men's retreats. And
yeah,
it's often, not always, but it's often for guys that have lost their purpose. Again, highly successful on the outside, but if you spent 30 years building the company and then you sell it, the trappings of wealth, and you've got the house, the car, everything, but what's your purpose now?
yeah.
What do you get up every day to do? And that can be really daunting for some, and they've got nobody to talk to.
Mm,
Nobody
yeah,
say, I feel like this now.
Mm.
If you store that, and that becomes stress and trauma, and over the period of time is, so we help guys really, and we use breath, and we use cold water immersion, and we teach them how to eat and sleep and move well and think well, and it's just amazing. Even after a 3-day retreat, how the guys are moving away and saying, actually, I can. I'm not saying we give them their purpose, but they see a little seed, they see
Yeah.
a little shoot, and they think, actually, that's what I can attach to. That's what I think I'm going to get after. So, but the men, I've never been so impressed by the guy's ability to open up and talk and communicate their really deep feelings.
Yeah.
Most of these guys break down because they say, I've never had this. They'll meet their guys and they go to a pub, and I'm not being stereotypical, but generally, and they'll talk about the football and they'll talk about men's things, and they never get a chance to talk about the feelings.
Yeah.
And they don't want to then burden their spouse or their partner with their feelings and all of that. So we create these spaces for men to be able to talk about it, and thinking about how we integrate breath work and how we integrate, really, really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's underpinned, it is that holistic organism again, isn't it? It's underpinning everything. Because I remember I had a chat with Andy. What a great guy he is, by the way, and I'm so grateful for this connection. But when I was chatting with Andy, I said, how come? I said, are you thinking about doing any mixed retreats as well? Because it sounds really interesting. And he said, yeah, and maybe we'll be looking at, the feminine and ways that women can lean into softening more. And I was like, oh, hang on a minute. And I was like, I think we're in danger of getting into stereotype. What do older women act like? What do women act like? What do men act like? And it's the paradox there that you're saying that, men need space to talk about their feelings, and women need space to be strong and strident without being accused of being bull breakers or kind of not in their feminine essence, because that isn't who I am. And it's also very binary thinking, I think. So I'm hoping that I get the chance to, I'm sure I will, because he's going to come on here, chat more with Andy about all of this work. And just because I could sit here and talk to you all day, and I'm aware of time and everything, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions to begin to close on. So who and what are some of your favourite health and well-being inspirations? It could be people, it could be products, what are your favourite things? What motivates you?
It's really interesting, Steph, that the things that motivate me, excite me, are the things that I'm working on right now.
Yeah.
I've been around so long and seen so much stuff come and go, and I've tried to take the best of things that work. So really, and again, I'm not saying this because I'm involved in the company, but Alter, the business where we're looking at the DNA and the biometrics, and then giving people a trainer and a coach and supporting that whole journey, really excites me. Really excites me. My nutrition product really excites me because I'm having a chance to say, if you do this, then this is going to happen, without all the BS, all of the marketing, etc. And I came across a group of guys called Neuropeak, and they do breath work, and their work is amazing. They're looking at quantifying biomechanical, biochemical, and psychophysiological components of breath, and then create custom programs. And I'm doing the program, and it's mind blown. So it's understanding, does my work need to focus on the biomechanical components of breath work? So teaching myself about the diaphragm and how to diaphragm, and then I get all of my program based upon that. Or is it biochemical? So I'm more focused on understand the relationship with the oxygen, carbon dioxide,
and the hormones.
100%. And there's a pro. So they're pioneering in that space of quantifying the 3 different components and then giving people custom breathwork programs as a precursor to then go and do maybe an exploration in this conscious connected breathwork. Because doing that is, to me, that on my model, that's more been the flow state or the force state without the function.
Yeah.
People the diagram, and not to be scared and understand the biochemistry of, yeah, you may have things going on in different parts of your body. This is why. And you kind of people. So I've been really impressed with that. And then there's other things that I think are just, there's some of the meditation apps that are making meditation mainstream. It just makes me feel so grateful that people are putting it out in the world, and regular people are now accessing meditation.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So I think they're the big things. But again, it's like the movement, holistic piece with Alden, the nutrition piece with ProBio, the neuropeak stuff with breathing, and then the meditation.
Yeah. I'm going to look up neuropeak. That sounds really interesting, because I have suddenly become a contraindication for my own practice, and it's interesting that it came on a parallel with me working on this slow breath of really wanting to get people to slow down and feel and notice what's happening in their body, And then as I start bringing that in, all of a sudden it's like, oh, hang on, I've got this potential heart issue that means I can't do open mouth connected breath work. So what am I going to look at, and what am I going to do? So that sounds really interesting. I haven't heard of them, and I'll go and look them up. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And, we spoke a bit at the beginning about breath work and about Patrick's work, Patrick McEwen, because obviously he's more on the functional and performance side, and then we're more on the kind of, I suppose, consciousness, trauma and recovery side in different ways. And I kind of feel like all of these practices coming together, you just talked about the biochemical, the biomechanical, and then there's the psychological aspect as well, are so important.
Yeah, huge.
So important. My other, I suppose, final question, and I'm going to tag some of these. I'll tag your product, I'll tag your altar and your organizations and links, and find Neuropeak and Andy's work, of course, for that introduction. If you could share one or two final useful pieces of knowledge that you've acquired over the years that would support people in getting healthy and staying healthy, and I know that you've already shared a huge amount of that, but if you had one or two golden nuggets for people who aren't elite athletes necessarily, but who are going, what works? What do you see consistently working? Is there anything you want, any thought that you want to leave people with?
It again comes back to that model, Steph, is prioritize sleep.
Yeah.
And let me go back. My saying I say to everybody is live with intention. Just live with intention. Sleep intentionally. We're the only species on the planet that defers sleep. So don't defer sleep. Don't put sleep off to get another dopamine hit from another page. Or prioritize sleep is critical. Eat clean. Just eat clean. Your food doesn't have to be covered with all sauces. Like we don't, and I say this to the athletes, you don't have to eat like a toddler. You're basically eating to nourish the body and the soul, by the way. Good food is, we know the links there. So it's prioritize sleep, eat clean, have more control of your thoughts. Like be in control of your thoughts. Move with intent. Don't just go to the gym and throw weights around thinking that it's good for you. Move with intent and think about that. And then the breath work is critical, is just be empowered by your breath. Understand the power of your breath. And they would be my 5 very simple takeaways.
There's not much to add to that, really, is there, other than saying I agree with everything that you've shared. And I feel that, we do have this, you talked about dying healthy, and I think if we can come back to that place where we relate and understand our bodies in whole new ways, and we're not handing over our authority to everything else that we think knows better, the healthcare system, medication, etc., etc. And that's not to knock those things. Sometimes they're essential and sometimes they're incredibly useful, but it's that handing over of the inner awareness to give it to something outside of ourselves. And your practices are all about that. Thank you for the amazing product. I am really, really enjoying the ProBio. I haven't tried the smoothie one. I went for the orange one that you put in the water. There it is right now, ready for my day, setting myself up. Is there anything in particular that you have coming up that you would like me to share in the links, apart from your supplement, obviously.
I said to you at the beginning, I don't do social media. I don't broadcast things.
So you wouldn't even know.
Yeah, things very private. Just get after my business. But Andy has retreats coming up, and I always work on Andy's retreats for him. It's something that I like to give back and help people that way. Yeah, everything else is great. Everything else is going really well. So it's lovely to be able to sit and chat to people like you, Steph, who are passionately believing in something bigger than what we actually know. And that's my inspiration as well. And it's been great to just chat and share ideas. And I always take a little bit from every conversation. So I've learned quite a bit today.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, you've inspired me. It's that the reaffirming of these things that we do so that when all the things that come in, as in, I'll just look at another web page or I'll just watch another episode of that series on Netflix or what are we sacrificing in order to do that? And it's just given me that added boost again. Like, it's been a real delight to talk to you, Paul. Thank you.
No, thank you for your time, Steph. Really, really amazing.
Well, I hope our paths cross again in person and, that I get to see you somewhere soon.
Will, you have me now.
Yay! And if you need a guinea pig for your biometric systems, please